Well, Frank's going to make a move on this one. It's gone. Home run Clemente, and the Pirates 2, the Orioles nothing.
Here's Lemieux. The center penalty coming up. Look at Lemieux. Oh my goodness. What a goal. What a move. Lemieux. Oh, baby.
Hello, everybody on the Coronavirus Watch. We're going to provide some entertainment for you with our Pittsburgh Sportsline show, which is on hiatus. But I'm doing a special edition of Pittsburgh Sportsline this Friday at noon in the BPTV studio. This will be taped and presented whenever Dave can get this online. And we're practicing spatial distancing. So not the social distance, but we're a spatial distance of 6 feet. I just met Tim. We couldn't even bump elbows because we're a little bit too far away. And as you know, I'm Al Levine, the talking machine. I'm healthy. I've been practicing some spatial distancing since my transplant, since the flu season started right around in September, early this year, last year, when I got my kidney transplant. Got a great exam the other day. The doctor said my blood work, kidneys working well, urine's fine. Keep doing what I'm doing. I've been walking 20 minutes a day. He said, keep doing it, get out and about, and just avoid sick people. So they want me to practice this. Dave gave me a text message the other day, said, would I be available to do this show? So I'm here to do that. And I first want to say I'm praying for everybody in this time of need. This is not a hoax. All the people that are making fun of this is one of the worst pandemics we've ever had since maybe the 1918 flu. So take it seriously. They're obviously sending mixed emotions out there if you watch media. I work for a media company. I have not watched local or national news in 6 years. I get mine through other sources, and I even have friends in the military and at hospitals, and this is serious. And they don't have enough testing right now, so why lie about it? And how people are getting tested, I don't even want to know, because some are. But they are working on it, and they should be available. So in your time with this basic lockdown in the neighborhoods, we want you to enjoy our show. We're going to have some great sports talk with my first time meeting this new guest, Tim Hannon. And I want to introduce him right now and have him tell us a little bit about himself. I usually have some questions like, did you ever play sports?
Thanks, Al. Echo your thoughts and prayers right now with everybody and everything that's going on.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Tim Hannon. I co-host a podcast called Pittsburgh Sports Memories. It's also broadcast here on BPTV. I'm just a lifelong sports fan. I played a few sports when I was a kid, but
Tell me one.
I played baseball.
Okay, that was my favorite sport.
Yes.
I played that from 9 years old because at 8 years old I didn't want to play. I was too shy, believe it or not.
Okay.
The next year my friend said, Alan, you like playing baseball with us. Come on our team. First team in the minor league was Pirates. So I had black hat, black shirt.
Baseball, Al, was probably my favorite sport as a kid, and I loved the Pirates.
Yes.
And I was maybe 15, 16 years old whenever the Sid Bream thing happened. And I haven't ever loved baseball as much since.
Let me clarify something for you, because I know you're not a conspiracy guy on this stuff, but I always wanted Sid Bream on my show, one of my shows I do on location. So I talked to 10 different people, guaranteed Sid Bream would be on my show. 0. I go to a Jessica Lee show that I promote, a jazz singer, and this young guy comes up to me. He goes, Jess told me you'd do a sports talk show. Would you like me to tell Sid Bream to call you? I go, you're the 11th guy to tell me that. Just give me his number. He goes, it's right here. He gave me his number. I called the next day. We did phone tag for a week, had him on as a guest. Smoking Jim's new to baseball. He kept saying, what about the curse of Sid Bream? I said, that started a couple years later because people looking for an excuse. It was Barry Bonds not getting a good throw in there. And I mean, a guy with 6 operations, he explained his knee operations, and he's such a nice guy. He's a chaplain for a trucking company right now, and he lives in the North Hills. So I ended up doing another show with him at the Oaks Theater, did a special interview with him that they loved. And he enjoyed my interviewing style, so I hope you can put up with me, Tim.
I actually saw your show where you interviewed Sid Bream. I actually found that on YouTube. I was looking for something with Sid Bream, and I found that on there.
You're kidding.
So I've actually seen it, and it was enjoyable. He is a good guy. His kid went to my school back then, and so I'd
school
actually
was
met
that?
him. It was a Christian school in the North Hills.
Okay.
And when the Pirates didn't renew his contract and he went to Atlanta, he was pretty upset about having to leave
He
Pittsburgh.
explained he was heartbroken, him and his wife.
Right, and so it was so hurtful then to see him be the one that scored the run. And yeah, baseball's just never been the same in this town since, unfortunately.
Well, as you understand, believing in God and everything in your history, God puts mysterious things in our path and doesn't tell us what's going to happen.
Right.
And it's how we deal with it. And I'm assuming you've dealt well with some things and maybe not so well with others, just like I have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, thanks for pumping my big ego up, saying you watched my show.
I
with
did.
Sid.
It was a good interview. Yeah.
Thank you. Then you can co-sign that, and you did. Thank you very much. But I had fun with it.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed it also and thanked me afterwards, which, it's rare that somebody does thank me for that, but I appreciate that.
Good.
We'll let you carry on with our love of baseball, and then what's next?
Yeah, that's all.
My thing is you started out as a young man playing some baseball and stuff, and did you go to Steeler games?
Yeah. So I've been.
That's what I wanted to segue in.
Sure, gotcha. I've been a lifelong Steeler fan and Penguins fan and Pittsburgh sports fan.
Bleed
in
black
general.
and gold like me.
Bleed black and gold. My dad has had season tickets since the Three River Stadium opened. He was there for the Immaculate Reception, and he
Did he
started
see
taking.
it?
He did see it. He stayed.
Because
He was still
Myron
there.
Cope, a friend of mine, did not see it.
Yeah, some people. The guy. He had 2 tickets. He still has 2 tickets. The same 2 tickets he's had since
You're
1971.
kidding. Where does he sit?
It was section 276 in Three Rivers, and it's section 107 in Heinz Field.
Wow.
Same angle into
Right,
the field.
right. A lower
Yep.
seating.
Yep.
Yes.
And the guy he was with for the Immaculate Reception, he left early. He said, "This is over." He was going home.
Wow.
And my dad stuck around. He said, "I'll stick around till the end to see
Your
if
dad is
anything
a true
happens."
Steeler fan.
He
We
is.
watch every game till the end.
Yes. And so he started taking my brother and I to games in probably about the mid '80s.
Okay.
We actually just recorded an episode for our show for the Pittsburgh Sports Memories, where we did a whole retrospective on those '80s Steelers.
I will
that
watch
were
it.
bad. Yeah, and those
Because that's
teams.
why I'm glad John Opraskak offered his painting for our shows. And it's Three Rivers Stadium. I said, I have the greatest memories from skipping school and going to Three Rivers, watching opening day, to seeing championship games, playoffs, etc.
Yeah, I have a lot of
I'm
good
honored to
memories
have
too.
that on our show.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be there for the last game, and it was sad leaving that day. But when I first started going to those games in the mid '80s, the team stunk, and
Exactly.
And but as a kid, it was still fun being able to go to games and things like that.
Well,
So
you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, and like I said, we just did a whole podcast on those teams because you talk about the '70s Steelers, you talk about some of those Cowher teams, you talk about the Ben
What about
era.
the 80s?
Yeah, and that era is largely forgotten. A lot of those players are forgotten.
Sure.
And so we wanted to just go back and sort of relive that era, and it was sort of a tough time, and there was a lot of bad stuff, but then there was some good stuff too.
Sure. I'll have to tune into that. You piqued my interest for sure.
And so yeah, I've been going to Steeler games ever since. Had Penguin season tickets for a while. Had Pitt football season tickets for a while. Yeah, just a huge Pittsburgh sports fan. Lots of good memories. That's why we started the Memories podcast, because
And when did you start the Memories podcast?
earlier this year we just started it in January.
You're kidding. So you're newbies to this.
We're newbies. We've got, I think, 9 or 10 episodes recorded so far. We're releasing them every couple of weeks,
That's great.
and it's just been fun. It's with the lack of current sports right now, right? It's
My son
a
and
good
I
time to
are
look back.
struggling because we don't want to see all these specials and repeats of games from 10, 15, 20 years ago. We've seen them mostly. So why do we want to see them again? Unless it's one of those special games, but they haven't been doing that. They've been doing some college bowl games and everything else, which
Right.
I could care less at this
Right.
point in time.
Right.
No, I'm glad I can do some interviewing with you on it. I want to top your story about, I was at the last game at Forbes Field, because I think I'm a little bit older. I'll be 64 this year, so I think I got you by a few years. So friends of mine, we went to Forbes Field. We were in Braintree, so we had to take a bus and a streetcar to get there. And we're at the game, and after they were over, I didn't even know who won. People were tearing up seats. They're on the backstop, jumping on the backstop. They're pulling turf off the ground, trying to pull the plates out. Guards are trying to stop them. They got plates, they got everything. And you talk about an experience, I can still picture it talking to you today about how great it was being on the field, because that was a huge field. And I think 457 to, the center field, wall, I mean, that's unbelievable. And the backstop, that cage was huge. We even walked out there because people were climbing and jumping on it. You talk about what a day. You were seeing history just go by the wayside from 1909 to, what was it, 73 or something like that. So
Wow.
it was quite the experience, because I was into baseball big time and, enjoyed that thoroughly.
Yeah, that's great. That's a very cool I was there moment.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of people will tell you that stuff, because there might be 10,000 people at a game, and years later, there's 150,000 have all gone there. Just like when the Penguins first come about in '67, they had blue jerseys and stuff, but we didn't think about, why are they black and gold or not. We had our sticks, and we play hockey right outside with a ball. That's the fun we had with 10 of us playing hockey before the games. So, it's just great how you love the sports. I love the sports. So we're going to have some fun. Definitely. I got a couple promos that I like to do. And first up is Olive Oil's Pizzeria. They sponsor our show when we do our live Tuesday night show, which we've been doing for 8.5 years. And they give us an XL pizza and a hoagie for all our volunteers and myself to eat. And they're right at Hillcrest Shopping Center, 412-831-1900. I don't know if I should hold it up for you. And we appreciate their sponsorship. And to keep them in business, make sure you keep ordering for their takeout. They have great fresh products, all kinds of Italian food. So check it out. Next, I end each show with Stay Joey Strong. This is in honor of a 9-year-old boy who died before his 10th birthday, who had DIPG brain cancer. Very sad. I'm friends with the parents, and to show how they are and the character that they have and what good people they are, they've raised over $100,000 the last 6 years in honor of Joey. They do a 1-mile 5K run at the high school every September. Every year except for last year when I was getting my kidney. I missed it, but I introduced the superheroes that Joey loved. They wear superhero costumes, and they run to support Joey, and they raise thousands and thousands of dollars. Like I said, over $100,000 with events that they do. So go to the Joey Fabus Childhood Cancer Foundation, find out what they're doing, see if you can help. You could volunteer and help. You could give them as little as $1 or whatever you could afford, but it's a great foundation. And Stay Joey Strong. Next up, another nonprofit that I'm with. I'm trustee with the Bethel Park Historical Society's Schoolhouse Arts and History Center. They're at 2600 South Park Road. They do all kind of great events. They just put a $140,000 roof, put all new windows in this 1905 schoolhouse in Bethel Park. They revived it. They have a dance studio. They have an artist there. They have other businesses that rent the place out. They have historical rooms there, and it's just great. They also have my favorite, it's a coffee shop, but all you people know I like loose leaf green tea. Reginald's Coffee has some loose leaf green tea that I try to go there once or twice a week. They're shut down, but when they reopen, make sure you tell them Al Levine, the talking machine, sent you there. So check that out. Next up, where I'm actually the trustee of the Bethel Park Community Foundation. It's a great group. They have money for you in Bethel Park for your groups and organizations. that are doing good in Bethel Park. They have from $100 to $5,000. Believe it or not, in 25 years, they've given out $970,000. And they give out about 100 and some thousand each year. So we're going to hit that $1 million mark. And what a great organization this is that helps local Bethel Park people. So go to bpcf.org, get an application, come up here before our board when we have our meetings again, and we'll go from there. Next up, Dave Cable's a great director of BPTV, but he likes to have fun with me. He put my face on Uncle Sam. Tell them Uncle Al sent you. Al Levine, BPTV producer and host of Pittsburgh Sportsline. He told me to say, I want you for BPTV. We have all volunteers, and we have a great collection of young guys that come in on Tuesday night to do our show. I'm honored that Dave Cable is actually setting up this, taping the show, and the main man is doing this here while we have spatial distancing. So check it out. You can give a call, 412-831-3304, and see when Dave can plug you or your children into this system. That's what I have for my promos. One more, we also have Skeet Service Station 6103, Route 88. They're a red, white, and blue station. They do work on anything that runs on gas, cars, trucks, boats, weed whackers, you name it. And they also have a forge there. They have a drive shaft company, Pittsburgh Drive Shaft. They make axles, and they even started working on electronic yard and garden products like weed whackers, hedge trimmers. They can even fix them. They were told me, Skeets told me that. You can give him a call, because in this day and age, we got to be able to travel around once in a while. Give him a call, 724-348-4715. I'm not sure if he's shutting down, but a lot of places have. But give him a call. Tell him Al Levine, the talking machine, sent him. And now we'll continue with our show with Tim, and I'm going to pick his brain. All right. Now, you started with the Steelers and your dad. And you seem like an expert because you're doing a podcast, and you mentioned memories of the 80s, so you piqued my interest even more. When did you think you would start a podcast, or how did this even come about?
I think it started when my co-host and I were sitting there one evening at dinner, and we were just, hey, remember the 1994, whatever, and
Yeah.
we just started getting in all these details. And the Dave Cable, who you mentioned, was
Yes.
with us, and he said, you know, if you guys, and I mentioned I'd love to do a podcast sometime, because I
Sure.
love podcasts.
Right.
I listen to podcasts constantly.
They're
I'd
so
love to-
popular. I get asked all the time, when am I going to do a podcast? And maybe I should, but I go, I got something unusual. It's called a TV show.
Yeah, and it's a great thing to listen to in the car. It's just, so I wanted to do that. And
And you have access to it 24 hours a day.
Right. And so, Dave said, hey, if you guys, imagine if you actually did some research and got your thoughts organized, that would potentially
So he
make an
guided
interesting
you.
podcast. Yeah. And so we sort of did a pilot run, and we thought it turned out good, and we've just been going from there.
How long have you known Dave? I got to test you.
25 years, maybe, something to that effect. We were roommates once upon a time.
I wanted to get some history from you. I'm
Yes.
working at it hard.
Yes, yes.
No, I can understand that. No, what a way to segue into being on BPTV with a podcast.
Yes.
No, that's
Yes.
great. I may have to consider that podcast notion soon. I'll have
Yeah.
to look into it. We'll have to talk off air about that.
Yes.
So you got it up and going.
Yeah, and so it's a fun way to we pick a topic every episode.
What was your first one?
The first one was we did the Steelers. We started with the Steelers because
Of course.
just a simple place to start, and we did the season where Tommy Maddox was the starting quarterback. It was the 2002 season,
I remember it.
and there was a lot that happened that season that people sort of don't remember the details of all the. So there was a bunch of crazy games and
Give me
events.
one of them.
They played the Atlanta Falcons to a
I remember
34-34
that.
tie.
Michael Vick,
Michael Vick, and
the old convict.
they threw a Hail Mary in overtime that the Steelers caught on the 1-yard line and got tackled. And that was just one of a handful of crazy games that year, and crazy events. You know, when that season started, you
Sure.
expected something completely different. So we just kind of went through that whole season and talked about that. And so, you know,
Let me
that's kind of
interrupt
the
you.
format.
Please tune in to their show. Say it again, Sports Memories.
Pittsburgh Sports Memories. You can find it anywhere where you get your podcasts, iTunes, or anywhere where you normally would get your podcasts.
Okay.
And you can also see it on BPTV and on BPTV's YouTube channel.
Well, I'm a little prejudiced with BPTV, so I'm all about it with having 660 plus shows on there. And with Facebook, this old dog learned a couple tricks. I have 6,878 likes, so I learned a few things over the years. And, you know, thank you all for liking our page and watching our shows. And I hope you appreciate this show with the great knowledge I'm getting, because I'm learning a few things about how, where, when, and what to find your show. So what happened after that first one?
We just came up with more topics and recorded more episodes. And like I said, with current sports, you know, there's the only thing really going on with current sports right now is NFL free agency, which, you know, there's certainly a lot going on there.
I will pick your brain on that whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
But other than that, it's all you can do is look backwards, right?
Like I said, my son and I are struggling because ESPN's not for us anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It truly isn't, because nothing's current.
Nothing's current, right?
Yeah.
Right. But so it's maybe a good segue there. The one thing that is current right now is the NFL calendar year is still moving along.
Yes.
And free agency started, and I know for the Steelers, right, there's been a lot of things happening that are relevant.
Do you
for
want to
people who are
delve
Steeler
into
fans.
that? Because our Pittsburgh Sportsline fans all over the country and world are Steeler fans.
Yeah. Yeah, let's delve into it. I mean, so free agency started. I think the biggest move for the Steelers, or the biggest free agent they had,
Yeah.
was Bud Dupree.
Right.
And they put the franchise tag on him. I mean, so the options were you let him go, you sign him to a long-term contract, or you franchise him for just next year
Right.
and see what happens. And so, Al, I don't know if you have thoughts on, you know, was that the right move or not?
Well, here's the issue with Bud. 5 years he couldn't play football. He ran past quarterbacks all the time. Then he'd run past running backs and turn around and go catch them 15 yards down the field. This past year, a miracle happened. He became one of the better linebackers in the league. And, oh, by the way, why has it happened? It's the last year of his contract. And there's quite a coincidence. So I hate to say it, but I started to reminisce about Lamar Woodley, who I liked as a linebacker till he got too fat to play. And he had the same thing happen to him, where he signed a multi-million-dollar contract and basically bombed out.
Right.
So I have those reservations as a true Steeler fan, and always being around the cap, and they are great at adjusting and having players do that. So when I heard the $16 million, I go, who are they going to let go? Who are they going to get to readjust? So now I'm up to speed with where you're going to tell me that.
Yeah, no, and that's
Because my fears were huge.
I agree with you, and I think I would agree with you that he doesn't have the long-term proof that he's going to do what he
1
did
year,
last year.
1 year under the belt.
Right, is going to be every year. So that franchise tag gets him that 1 year. If he repeats that next year, well, then you go from there. I think their other concern was the other pass rusher is T.J. Watt,
Yeah.
and he's still on his rookie deal, and they're going to have to pay him big money at some point.
There's going to be money like you can't believe out there, because
Right.
look what he's done.
Right. So if you can maybe groom somebody in the meantime and get one more good year out of Bud Dupree, then maybe that's the end of Bud Dupree in Pittsburgh.
You're giving me some logic on this, but you know it's mostly emotional with what we feel.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I'm with you. He wasn't I didn't think he was a terrible player. I didn't think he was a total bust. But I certainly, if this would have been last year and he would have been a free agent, I would have been like, okay, well, he's replaceable. And now this
Right.
year, all of a sudden, it's like, oh boy, you kind of need him, but you're wary of what he can do. So that franchise tag is nice because it gives you one more year,
Right.
and then you see what happens, and then you go from there. Now, if next year are we going to have the same conversation? Is he going to have
Oh, did I
15
have to ask
sacks.
you, being a sports fan, what's your prediction for Bud this year coming up, honestly?
That's a great question. I don't know, because if it's a
That's a great answer.
well, I mean, one of two things. Either he really learned some things in his first few years and he's just going to keep playing like this. Maybe he's also motivated. I mean, technically it's another contract year for him. So I think he'll have a decent year. I don't know if it'll be as good as last year, but I think he'll be. I don't think he'll just flame out.
Right.
But 2 or 3 years from now, could he? He might.
After he gets that multi-million-dollar
Right.
deal. No, I appreciate your insights on that, because I'm hesitant. It could be 1 year and done.
Right.
Because I'm a realist. And whatever he was learning wasn't sinking in for 5 years. And I played sports, and I appreciate watching kids as they get better. And that's what the progression I look at with players. Okay, they're at college in a system, now they're in the pro system. How do they get better? And we saw that with TJ Watt immediately.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a 360-degree thing. He's completely different.
And that's what it might come down to. They might have to pick between the two of them, and I think they'll probably pick TJ Watt.
How can they not?
Yeah, because he's just he's just the better player.
And he's made himself better with some of his moves, and a spin move, and a knock the ball away all the time. Look at the fumbles that he's created.
Right.
Look at the disruptive force he is. He's a true game changer.
I
is
believe
what
he
have to
finished.
say.
I believe he finished second in the Defensive Player of the Year.
He should have
voting.
won.
Yeah, I mean, he could have easily won. So that's how good he is. They recently signed his brother, the fullback, Derek Watt,
I saw that.
from the Chargers, and some people were speculating, do we really need a fullback? Why do we go sign a fullback? And some people were speculating that, okay, maybe they needed a fullback. Maybe the side bonus of
Massage
that
the
was,
ego a little.
Well, yeah, now his brother plays here. Maybe that gives him more reason to re-sign when it's time to
Well,
re-sign.
the Steelers are about family, even though it is a billion-dollar business. So we know, both of us being smart guys, that it's always not about the family and the concept. Because, look, you got to compete with all the other people that are out there. And in this day and age, there's a lack of respect for themselves and others with just how they treat social media. Get off the social media, play football.
Yeah, and I think they've done a good job of sort of
Curtailing some
restructuring.
of- yeah.
Well, restructuring their team to kind of weed out some of the drama that had been
Well,
plaguing
the killer bees were, no pun intended, killers.
them. Right.
And it's hard to replace the skills that they had, because they did have skills.
And that's another good question, right? So free agency, they signed a fullback. They haven't obviously made
I heard
any other
Le'Veon
moves.
Bell could be back in black and gold.
That
I heard
boy,
it from some reliable sources
That-
off the record.
That would seem like that would be a shocker.
Did you see any games that he played?
Yeah.
He looked terrible.
Yeah, he wasn't good. I don't know if that's a product of playing for the Jets or not.
Well, here's one thing it is. The blocking scheme. I played center in football, and you block a certain way. They'd have me chase linebackers down the field to block for the next level. Now, with our blocking, we would take a step, then block a guy or keep a block going, where the Jets weren't like that at all.
Okay.
So they didn't have those skills that I could see. When
Yeah.
a couple games that I watched, I was like shocked. I go, he doesn't even have a chance to run,
Right.
let alone hesitate.
Right, and that's sort of the way he ran.
Right, and there was that hesitation, then he'd take off.
Right.
And he had the eye to see just a little bit of a hole, which that's where I give him credit. And the Steelers always bragged about their line, but losing their line coach, Munchak, who's a legend,
Right.
I think that affected him on the little nuances that we look for in the games.
That makes sense.
So I'm hopeful. If he came back, I think that would be not really a good thing, because he's much older, a couple years older now. And the year that he had, who knows? But if he had any skills left, I'd be happy for a year or two of that.
Well, and that's one of the positions that they're sort of thin on. They have James Conner, but he's always hurt. And I love James Conner. I'm a big Pitt football fan, and
Sure.
I've loved James Conner since his sophomore year of college.
Just the heart that he has.
Sure. And I always just loved watching him play, even before the whole cancer thing. I just
Sure.
loved watching him play. So I
He's
love,
a great athlete.
Yeah, I love James Conner. That being said, he's hurt all the time. Like what's the long term for his career? It doesn't look very good. And so do you go get a running back? So you'd have to trade for Le'Veon Bell.
Right.
There's still other guys that are out there. Melvin Gordon from the Chargers. Yeah. He wanted huge money. Supposedly nobody's offering him that.
Sure.
Still seems like that would be a
Put
stretch.
it like this: they don't like to talk about blacklisting like the NFL practices.
Yeah.
But common sense tells you 1 + 1 = 2. They don't want to spend the money on these guys, and they know they need them, so they figure they'll let them hold out, and they'll come begging a year or two later or 6 months later because they want to play. And their window closes.
Yeah.
The average career is 3 years in the NFL. That's the average.
And that's especially true for the running back position because those guys just get hit every single play. And the running back position, whatever year that we drafted Le'Veon Bell, I think that was 2013. We drafted him in the second round. He was the first running back taken in that draft.
Right.
Because back then nobody was valuing running back. And then
Hence blacklisting.
Yeah, well, and everybody just said, running back is not a key position. It's a throwing league now, and running back is secondary.
They were even saying it's a dime a dozen for running backs, and that's a classic line that it means you can get them anytime and cheap.
Yes, and so there was no investment in the running back position. Then around 2017 or so, you had guys like Todd Gurley and players like that all of a sudden kind of change that curve a little
arthritis.
bit. Before arthritis. Well, and then he gets a huge contract. He just got cut a few days ago by the Rams.
What a surprise.
Yeah, well, because again, and they have to eat something like $20 million in dead cap space because they paid him a ton of money. So it kind of like went through this cycle of like, oh, running backs are valuable again, and now I feel like we're right back at, they're a dime a dozen.
Sure.
And so you see the Falcons cut Devontae Freeman, and the Chargers had no interest in signing Melvin Gordon last year when he was holding out. There's still exceptions. Derrick Henry got franchised by the Titans, and Ezekiel Elliott.
What a beast!
Right,
game changer.
He was so dominant, and so you still have, I think, those maybe upper echelon guys that maybe are like you can't live without them.
Sure.
But I think, like you said, the rest, I think they're viewed as dime a dozen. So if you're the Steelers, what are you doing there? You have a couple of guys.
Do you have $1 million for Le'Veon, and he can take it?
Right, or any of these other guys that are out there. Some
Sure.
of those guys that got cut and are just sitting out there.
No, Gordon's a good back.
Yeah, Gordon, Freeman. I think Carlos Hyde was another veteran guy that's out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's worthwhile or not, but boy, it'd be interesting to see if they're thinking about it. And the Steelers,
They have a need.
They have a need, and the way they operate in free agency. One of the shows we just did was on the '95 Steelers, the Super Bowl 30 year.
Sure.
And we talked about how those were the early years of free agencies, and you remember back then, the Steelers just tended to sort of lose everybody. They'd lose everybody every year, but then they'd make some smart signings. They'd get like a Kevin Green or a player like that.
Savvy. They're savvy on their stuff, and their cap knowledge is great.
And I feel like since from that point until now, what's really changed in the Colbert era is they've done a much better job of locking down their own players, the ones that they want to keep.
It reminds me of the Penguins.
Similar, yeah, very similar.
Because they're great at that.
They are. And
not to change sports right away.
No, but the Penguins also are savvy at going out there and getting these guys that aren't big splash.
Since we're on that, look at the core group that they have is in their early 30s, still doing well. Mm-hmm. And what did Rutherford do? Increase the speed of the team with savvy picks.
Right, and the Steelers aim to do that every year in free agency. They've never gone out there and gone after the. If you look at any website, they'll have the top 10, the top 30
We're not even close.
Free agents. We never once signed one of those guys, and I think it's worked out fairly well.
Yeah.
The Steelers last year they signed Steven Nelson, the cornerback, who was probably way down on that list somewhere, and he ended up being a pretty good cornerback.
Right.
Now they also signed Mark Barron, who didn't work out as well. They also signed that receiver that couldn't catch.
Yes.
So, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But that's their MO in free agency. So if they were going to go after a Melvin Gordon, it would be probably after every other team passed on him, and a month or two from now when he's not worth as much. Depreciated, right. Right. So that's always been their strategy. So it'll be interesting to see if they go after a running back. Receiver's another position that they just were
Put it
super
like this:
thin in last year.
our quarterbacks were new, And Duck was never picked up by any team but ours, then released and then picked up by our Steelers. And he did have some skills, but that only lasted for a little while. It's what you do after adversity happens. That's what I look for.
Yeah.
And he didn't step up.
Right.
I mean, he was cocky, which was good, not overbearing, and he had some skills, but his arm, that's the reason why he was in a Division III school, wasn't as good as they were saying it was. And he did have a good pocket presence for a while.
He did.
And some of the Steelers' blocking was not that good either. So, but I don't think he'll even be back. I've had an argument with Smokin' Jim, who's an NFL scout. I go, the Duck's gone. He goes, the Duck's the greatest thing since, whatever. And I go, no, he's not.
I would tend to agree with you. I said when we watched the last game against the Ravens, I said his Wikipedia page in 10 years is going to say the Ravens game in 2019 was the last game that Duck ever played in the NFL, and I really believe that's probably the last time he'll play an NFL game. And then that's another great question. What do you do at that position? Because
Yes.
I think a lot of people are, hey, Ben's coming back, so we're going to be high-flying offense like
Let
we
me
were
hold you right there.
5 years ago.
I have a flashback of what's our 4 Super Bowl winning quarterback,
Terry Bradshaw.
and how did he go out?
Yeah,
An
with
elbow
an elbow.
injury.
Right.
Now, I don't know the extent of his or what his was, but he never came back from that.
Right.
And I'm not a negative Ned. And technology's gotten better, surgery's gotten better, and we haven't heard much. And when you looked on the sideline, I said, who's that bear of a man with a huge beard? He looks like he gained 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And now they come out that, he's doing better, and we think he'll even be better than he was in his last good year, which was 5,200 yards. So you're telling me a guy had major surgery is going to throw for over 5,200 yards? Boy, am I hopeful. But I'm doubtful.
I'm glad you brought up Bradshaw because when I told you we did this show about the 80 Steelers.
Well, I figured it would tie in with something.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about was inevitably that 83 draft where the Steelers passed on Dan Marino, who was a Pitt kid and a Central Catholic kid. And oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't draft Dan Marino. And so, of course, that's the biggest mistake of all time.
I was friends of Dan Marino's dad. He didn't look anything like Dan, was bald, red-haired guy. He was a Teamster. He'd come in, and we'd have to give them papers. So they go, do you know who that is? I go, that's Dan Marino's dad.
Oh,
I've been
wow.
giving him papers for a couple years. And they go, do you ever talk about Dan? I go, yeah, once in a while I'll say what a good game he had because I'm a Pitt fan.
Right.
But I knew his dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
he was a great guy. Very nice, down-to-earth guy like us.
Okay. And so people look back at that and they say, I can't believe we didn't draft Dan Marino. But then if you just sort of, which is easy to say now, of course.
Well, put it like this, like all Steeler fans see black and gold, we're the greatest ever since the 70s. They forget about the 40 years before that when Art Rooney was hiring his drunken friends to be coaches.
Right.
But I don't want to digress. And what they forget is we had a certain way we wanted our quarterbacks to play. Mm-hmm. Dan Marino was a once-in-a-lifetime, he's been called the best passer ever with his style and his arm. He was 6'4". He could hit receivers like you couldn't believe. He anticipated their moves better than anybody, and the ball was there on a perfect spiral.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when I think about it logically, if he could have fit in with what the Steelers would do with their running game and limit their passing game, even though they opened it up a little bit with Lynn and Stallworth and Bradshaw later.
Yeah, and that could certainly have been a big factor. But I also think if you just put yourself in that moment, the March or April of 1983, okay, 2 months before that, Terry Bradshaw had led them to the playoffs. They were in a playoff game against San Diego.
Thank you.
2 months before that, and it wasn't like that Bradshaw said, "This is my last game." For all you knew, Bradshaw was going to play another 3 years, another 4 years.
At least.
And he maybe wasn't as good as he was in 1978 or 79, but he's still leading you to the playoffs.
One of the most powerful arms we ever would see.
So would you draft Dan Marino to sit on the bench for 3 or 4 years And so that was a big factor. Now, what ended up
Those are
happening,
great points because that's the logic behind this.
Exactly. And so they went for a defensive tackle instead. Chuck Noll was trying to recreate the Joe Green position, and so that's what they drafted. But what ended up happening was Bradshaw had elbow surgery in Louisiana. It was kind of like secretive.
Sure, it was.
And then he didn't play. He missed the whole 1983 season. He came in for one half against the Jets late in the season.
I remember.
And that was it. That was his last game. We had that game on a Betamax tape for years because it was Bradshaw's last
Sure.
game. But that was it. He was done.
Yeah.
And in March of 1983, you thought he might play another 4 years. And in October,
was
November
done.
1983, he's done. So is Ben going to play another 3 or 4 years? Or is he going to be done by November?
Good question.
And that's every quarterback. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl his last year, but remember he had gotten benched for Brock Osweiler. He was pretty bad.
He had stem cells injected into his spine, and it took a while for that to kick in.
Yeah.
But his talent was so diminished.
Right.
The great defense in Denver wanted for him.
Right. So
He
guys
tried not to make mistakes.
exactly. So guys can fall off a cliff really quick.
Yeah.
And Ben doesn't, to your point earlier, Ben doesn't exactly have the Tom Brady kind of health
Work
and workout
ethic.
habits. He just doesn't. I mean, and so
What do you mean? The 20 pounds he lost before this past season, he didn't look better? He looked better because of
he
that.
looked better. And I love
He didn't
Ben.
have that big gut.
No, and I love Ben, and I hope he comes back and he's awesome. But now you haven't got the weapons anymore. You don't have AB. You don't have Le'Veon Bell. You
Right.
have fewer weapons. You have him coming off an injury. I just think there's so much uncertainty. You have Mason Rudolph. Your point about how do you bounce back from adversity? I'd be more interested in Mason Rudolph because
He showed it.
I think he was starting to show it. He went through a lot. I mean, the injury against Baltimore.
How do you get knocked out?
Yeah,
You get knocked out, and they're not even taking you off on a cart.
I know.
So just that extreme in itself.
Oh, and then the whole helmet thing and being accused
and then
of
the false accusations
Right.
when nobody on the Browns heard or nobody on the Steelers heard the N-word.
yes.
So I don't care what kind of guy Garrett was or is, he's a liar.
Yeah.
And he should be called out for being a liar.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was
That's how simple this is.
bogus. But that's all the stuff that Mason Rudolph had to deal with. Can he come back? What if Ben gets hurt in week 2 again, or what if Ben just doesn't have it anymore?
Right.
So do you go with Mason Rudolph and trust Mason Rudolph, or do you go out there? There are some veteran.
I'd look at a
quarterbacks
couple
out there.
veterans just as a temporary type of thing, because Mason Rudolph showed me some improvement from his first year when he didn't play at all. He showed me some of the things he has, but he also showed me some of the things he doesn't have. And that's what bothers me for our future. And he didn't have very many good receivers, so I'll give him that.
Right.
And the running game was shot, so I'll give him that also. So those things can be fixed or tweaked.
Right.
So I'm a little hopeful that when we start the season with him, that we'll have some improvement.
I'm hopeful for that too, and I think if you go out there, so we've already seen this huge quarterback carousel, right?
Yes.
Brady goes to Tampa Bay,
Yeah.
and Phillip Rivers goes to the Colts, and Tannehill and Breeze stay where they're at, and Teddy
Yeah.
Bridgewater I think went to the Panthers. Just a whole bunch of movement in quarterbacks.
Rarely do you see that.
Not to this level certainly, and so who's still out there? I mean, Jameis Winston's still out there.
Why would you want a guy that can throw 5 interceptions and 5 touchdowns?
Well, and I don't know that he's going to want to come be a backup either. He was a starter. Maybe
Egos come into play.
there's an opportunity out there for him somewhere. You have guys like Andy Dalton, who you'd have to trade for because he's under contract, but the Bengals are going to draft the kid from LSU.
Right.
So if you go out and get a veteran quarterback, it's going to be at least a $5 or $6 million cap hit, and that means that if you wanted to sign a running back, receiver, offensive lineman, whatever, you're investing that in a guy that potentially might stay on the bench the entire year.
Sure.
So I think that's a tough decision.
How do you weigh that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
As a team.
And I don't know the right answer to that. But then if you go into the season with Mason Rudolph, then you really have to trust that Mason Rudolph is your guy, that he learned enough last year, because it might come down to him again.
Right.
You never know.
I'm thinking it does.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point. And
Just
I
the
think,
way things are and the way we're going to be limited in our cap.
Yes.
no matter what. We got to face the reality of it.
Right, and the optimism, hey, Ben's back, so now everything's back to normal. I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. And
I cringe
hope
on
it
that
is.
just because of history here in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And when you start messing with tendons, it wasn't Tommy John surgery. So what surgery was it, which they don't explain?
Yes.
And how bad was that tendon? Because he couldn't throw, obviously. He was
Right.
having trouble before that,
Right.
which we wondered about Ben before those games.
Right.
Because it's like, how's he missing some of these incompetent receivers?
Right.
Because they're open.
Right. And that's where
And you watch the game, so you know what I'm talking
no,
about.
and that's where you started to think, is this going to be a Peyton Manning thing where he just drops off a cliff really quick? It's not a progressive thing. It's just like,
Right, he's done.
and so yeah, maybe the good news is no, he just needed that. He needed to take a season off and have the surgery. That's the optimistic look. The pessimistic look.
Let me knock
is,
on wood.
Yes, is the opposite. So
I'm staying
who
my
knows?
spatial distance.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of questions there, and then the guys he's throwing to. So Juju had that chance last year to be the number one guy, and to your point, didn't exactly have top talent throwing him the ball.
He had none because how do you have a guy that did so well, got injured, and then couldn't catch a ball and would fumble a ball at key moments? Now that's a choker. We're not used to chokers on the Steelers lasting long.
Yeah, I think I think it seems.
I got to call it like it is.
No, it felt more like that than it. You could certainly say, they're going to just double cover him because there's nobody else to throw to.
And guess what? They slap the ball out.
Right.
They do that all day long. They're taught that by their defensive guys in college.
Right.
So you don't know to protect the ball.
Yeah. I mean
That's why are you a pro?
well, and that directly led to the Baltimore loss. I mean, if you win that game,
Thank you.
you're in the playoffs potentially. So, yeah, that was disappointing. Some of those young receivers looked like they could be good, but you don't know. So
They'd
so
show
what do you
a
do there?
flash, then they'd show the non-splash.
Right.
Like we're looking for splash plays like Tomlin calls it. I call it the non-splash.
Yeah.
And it was all year long.
Yeah. Now, is that a product of not having the quarterback and the offensive line issues and the defense just saying, daring you to throw the ball, basically? Go ahead, throw it.
Right.
Go ahead. Let Duck Hodges throw the ball. We'll play way back and let him throw.
And
so,
they did.
Right. And so, that could be part of it too.
And the line, however great they were publicized before the year began, they were not great.
Right.
And if you're an average fan, you could see that. Like I watched the line specifically with my history, and I would just see certain things in blocking, and these guys look like a rusty gate, letting them right in.
Yeah. So definitely a ton of questions on the offensive side of the ball, and I don't know. I would not want to be Kevin Colbert right now because
How do you improve everything?
how do you improve? I mean, and the defense is in pretty good shape, so at least you have that going
Yeah.
for you. But on the offensive side of the ball, you don't have a first-round draft pick. And what do you do in free agency? And if you're going after one of those second, third tier guys, Dante Moncrief was one of those
Yeah.
offensive second, third tier guys last year, and he was a disaster.
Oh,
So do you go after a Emmanuel Sanders or a Demarius Thomas?
well, since
or-
Samuels left the Steelers, he could catch balls. He couldn't catch them when he was here. And I go, am I the only person that knows that in Pittsburgh?
Right.
What was wrong with him?
Right, and he's had a pretty good career, but he's up there in years.
He's old now.
So I don't know. I don't know the right answer to that, but boy, it's.
I was trusting you
It's
for
tough.
one answer. I need one answer. Come on, Tim.
I
heard all good about you.
I just think it's a really tough offseason because of Ben coming back from the injury,
And we don't know.
And we don't know. It's one of those seasons. There are a lot of seasons where you go in and you kind of have expectations. I talked about that 2002 season.
Yeah.
They had made it to the AFC title game the year before, and you kind of expected them to build on that.
Yeah.
Talked about that 95 season. It was the same thing. They lost the AFC title game, but they're going to build on it. And this season, they could go 6-10. They could go 11-5.
It'd be Tomlin's first losing year, which
It
he
would
stakes
be.
his reputation on that.
It would be. I mean, it just feels like it could go any direction. And I can't remember the last season we headed into where it just felt like, boy, anything could happen.
I'm like you. I can't remember a season where I thought like I'm thinking now because I'm worried.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the
Because the
division.
defense can't win us many games. It could be 2 or 3, but we need more than that.
Right. And the defense got a lot of turnovers last year. Are they going to be that opportunistic this year?
I'll just tell you in a nutshell, what you do one year that's exceptional isn't always followed up with another exceptional year. So if we're realistically following the team, okay, say there's 5 or 6 less interceptions or turnovers. How many games did that decide? 2 or 3? 4?
Excellent point.
So
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
realistically, the odds of repeating that kind of a process just aren't there.
you got to be realistic.
You got to be realistic, and so yeah. What
Will
happens? next year, I
T.J.
don't
Watt
know.
play as well? I'm hopeful, and he showed that he can.
Right.
That's the
Right.
difference. Bud Dupree, still a question or 2 questions.
Yes. Well, in the rest of we're in a good division now. I mean, we had that sometimes where you were in a weaker division.
Sure. Oh, we thrived on that.
And right now, Baltimore had the best record in the league last year.
Yeah.
They just traded for that Calais Campbell. They just filled their biggest hole was defensive line. They just
Sure.
filled that. Cleveland's been out there signing. They signed the big tight end Hooper.
Yeah.
They've been out there making some signings, and then Cincinnati's going to draft again the quarterback. So
That should be an improvement.
that should be at least an improvement.
Yeah.
And they franchised their receiver AJ Green. So again, the whole winning the offseason, last year everybody said Cleveland's going to be dominant. And of course
Smoking
they
Jim
weren't.
stated on our first show of the football season that on paper he was going with the Clevelands winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I had to do a disclaimer at the end of the year, said, I hate to talk about an honest guy like Smoking Jim because he says he's an honest man, but he predicted Cleveland winning the Super Bowl, and Chip and I said, no, they're not going to. There's still the mistake on the lake being that they have to prove that they can do it, and they did not.
Right.
On paper, it looked great.
Right.
And then Baker Mayfield as a leader, what happened to him being a leader?
Right.
He got so childish and argumentative that he lost his focus on what he's good at.
Right. Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah,
just from my humble opinion,
No, and who knows? And now they have a new coach, and now they,
one
so-
of the worst coaches they ever had.
Right. Right. And that's saying something for Cleveland.
I know, because they're traditional that way.
Right.
Anybody that likes the Browns, I have empathy for you because I actually feel bad for you.
I do too. I again, when we were talking about that 95 team in
Yeah.
our show, we were talking about, remember, that was the height of that rivalry because they had
The epicenter.
in 94 they had played each other 3 times, including the playoffs.
Right.
And that was really I grew up in the you hated Cleveland era.
Sure.
And ever since they came back after that hiatus, I don't know, you don't hate Cleveland. You just, like you said, you feel sorry for their
I have
fans.
empathy. I'll
Yeah.
explain it. It's simple.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him, and I had a younger lady at my show. It's a fan of our show, and I had her on for a minute or two, and she goes, I'm a Cleveland Brown fan. And I told her the same thing. She goes, well, we're hopeful each year.
Right. Right. No, those fans deserve better. They're good fans.
Oh, they are. They're loyal.
They are.
They're more loyal than a lot of Steeler fans
Mm-hmm.
would be because I call a lot of our fans fair weather fans. As long as we're winning, we're going to the Super Bowl. If we lose one game, we're going to be in last place. How did that happen?
Well, one of the reasons we wanted to do that 80s show was to kind of put things in retrospective because an 8-8 season right now is a disaster to a lot of Steeler fans. Oh my gosh, that was the worst. We were 8-8.
Smoking Jim said for a couple years when they were 8-8, the Steelers don't want to be great. They want to be 8-8. So for 4 years I had to hear it, but 2 of those years they were like that. And now we're back to that.
They were, but if you compare that to where we were 30 years ago and some of those bad teams we had in the 80s, it was just good to sort of remember that
We went through tough times.
we've gone through tougher times, and they still field a pretty competitive team every year. Not where everybody would want them to be.
Well, you can talk about how great Noel was, and he was called the Emperor, but he fell in love with players and kept them too long. And we as fans could see that.
Mm-hmm.
But he couldn't let go because of what they did for him. And we paid the price.
Yeah.
And he paid the price with his job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to call it like it is. The reality means everything.
Right.
And it makes a big difference because you're not supposed to be that way. Like in the free agent era, you don't have a chance now because they'll be gone and you can't pay them.
Well, you look at the way that Belichick runs the Patriots. And Brady leaving was such a shock. And you wonder, did Brady want to leave because he felt like he didn't have the weapons? Or is that one of those typical Belichick, okay, I'm done with you now? Like he's done with so many of their other
Put it like this,
stars.
I think they were on the verge of that the last couple years just because of Belichick's personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ate at Tom because he's such a competitor. And the question always is, did the egg come before the chicken or what?
Sure.
So who helped who with this?
Right.
Or whom?
And,
So
and the way Belichick runs that team is a little cold, but it's
it's
what you
business-like
have to
and
do.
professional in this
It
era.
is. It is, and that's what you have to do. And they certainly have had enough success to show that he's doing it the right way.
Yes.
As
And
much
they,
as
they
we all
did have
hate
the
it here.
greatest quarterback of all time there.
They
So
did. They did. I know.
That
I know.
means something, Tim, no matter how you grade this out.
And that's very courageous for you to say to a Pittsburgh audience
I
because
have to.
I know a lot of people, and I'm with you. I would not call myself a fan of Brady.
Oh, I'm not a fan of his at all.
But I would acknowledge, yeah, he's the greatest. He's the greatest. I mean, I
From
don't
a
see how-
sixth-round pick
Yeah,
to what he became,
yeah. I don't see
mean,
how
he
you can
worked
say that
hard. I
he's not.
appreciate the work ethic that he put in. Now, attitude-wise and whatever else, I could care less.
Right.
But I don't have to love him. I just respect him.
Right, I do too, and boy, it'll be interesting to see what he does in Tampa Bay. It'll be interesting to see what New England does without him.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be. We talked about the Steelers and uncertainty, and it'll be an interesting season. I think the whole season, assuming it happens, who knows what's going on right now.
Well, the
but-
first thing we need is Big Ben to start throwing footballs.
Right.
That's the first thing we need. Then the second thing is to see how he recovers after throwing with a major surgical arm.
Yes.
So those two things are at the top of my list in case you didn't notice. And after that, then I'll start to think rationally.
Yes. Absolutely. So yes, but I think in the free agency, again, they sort of kept their best player. They lost a few guys.
Yeah.
They haven't made a splash, which is you wouldn't expect them to.
What do you think they're going to do realistically?
With the rest of free agency?
Yes.
I think they'll probably wait until the draft and see who they get in the draft.
Okay.
I think they'll try to plug holes that way. The only caveat I'd say to that is, again, they don't have a first-round pick. And
Right, it's a second-round pick. So.
Yeah, and they also traded away that third-round pick, but they got a compensatory pick.
Yes.
But they have, what, 2 picks in the top 103
Yes.
picks or something? So only
But
because
one of
of
them's
that.
51 or something, they've been saying.
Right.
So I don't know how you hold your hat on 51.
So that's what I mean. So in a normal year, I think they'd wait for the draft. This year, I don't know. They might be more
Well,
aggressive.
that's why I asked, because I think they might make a move
They might have to.
with somebody, because if they can negotiate them down a little bit,
Right.
because the reality of them not playing or getting a team or nobody really wants you,
Right.
or there's nobody to compete against with the negotiations, I think that could help.
Yeah. I could see them making a more of a splash move than they normally do.
Yeah, that's
Just
just my
because of that.
little insight to it, because I don't follow the draft as well as you do. But I just got the signal from Dave that we're going to be wrapping this show up because we went pretty in depth. I hope you enjoyed my new friend, and I'm a fan of, say the name,
The Pittsburgh Sports Memories.
on BPTV, iTunes, iHeart, whatever you get podcasts. Check these guys out. I'm already impressed with Tim and what he brought to our show, Pittsburgh Sportsline, and thanks for watching our show and pumping me up a little bit.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I gotta end this show. Thanks for watching us. Stay healthy during the coronavirus. Keep your spatial distance like we did today. We're staying healthy, and we're able to present sports to you on BPTV. Stay Joey strong.